morning, everyone, and welcome to Francis and Friends. And do we have a great program for you today? I'll come back to that in just a moment. We have a very special guest. If you were able to watch last night's live service from Family Worship Center, the 6 o'clock service, you saw our guest give a phenomenal talk. And we're going to be going along those lines this morning as well. But let me first welcome our other guest. Dave Smith is here this morning.
Amen. Good to be here. And I especially appreciated Dr. Wexler's explanation of the origination of the Palestinians. Very detailed and information that I'd never heard before.
Yeah.
Jim Nations is here this morning.
All right. Great to be here.
And our special guest, Dr. Ron Wexler. Dr. Wexler lives part of the time in Jerusalem and part of the time here in the States. And Dr. Wexler, I want you to know that last night I sat enthralled by what you had to say. I literally a couple of times found myself inching up and leaning over, sitting on the edge of my chair. And when you said the United Nothings, I thought I was going to come unglued. I started laughing so hard, referring to the United Nations. And he is the president of the Judeo-Christian initiative known as TCC, the Ten Commandments Commission. Dr. Wexler is also the owner of the Heritage Study Program, a program that includes several weeks of teaching, class study, and culminating with a historical trip to Israel. He has written several articles informing Christians about the constant diplomatic challenges facing Israel from countries around the world. And we're going to be interviewing him in much more depth in just a moment, but I have to get some housekeeping chores done. And that is to remind everyone, February the 24th through the 26th, I'm going to be ministering in Palm Harbor, Florida at Christ Church of Palm Harbor. Friday and Saturday night at 7 o'clock, Sunday morning at 10, Sunday evening at 6 o'clock. You can see the information on the screen. You can call the church for more information, or you can go to my website, donnieswaggart.org. So for every one of you in the Tampa Bay area, come out and be a part of these 4 services in Palm Harbor, Florida. I know that they will be a blessing to you. And I hope that you were able to catch the second airing of Preachers, Patriots, and Providence this past Saturday at 6 o'clock. And I hope you noticed as well that we took the first program that aired last week and we reran it at 5 o'clock for those of you that missed it. And that's what we're going to be doing from here on out. And that is, whatever the week's program is, we will be re-airing last week's program before the new one comes on. And so that way you'll have a continual flow. And I'd like to hear from you as to what you think about Preachers, Patriots, and Prophets. We've put a lot of work, a lot of labor in it. And I probably after the first program, I think I got well over 1,000 responses on Facebook of people that was enjoying the program, liked the program, loved the program. And if you're one of them, I'm going to ask you to tell others to tune in to Preachers, Patriots, and Providence. I'll get it right in a moment. Saturday nights at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time with the rerun of the week's prior program, 5 to 6. Mother?
Yes, and today, did you introduce Dr. Wexler?
I gave him the best introduction in the world.
Fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to it. But I know the guys were in service last night, and I just wanted to ask Dave Smith or Jim Nations before we start the program, do you have anything that you would like to ask Dr. Wexler or have him speak about on the program today?
Well, we were just talking, and Brother Dave talked about how interesting it was to hear the real truth about the Palestinians and how they come in. That was really interesting to me, too. I thought it was, and how they've really gotten where they've gotten through what they, and the way they did is just, it's very interesting. So, yes, but he did a great job, and all of us was on the edge of our seats last night listening to what he had to say. So we're looking forward to the program this morning and see what comes out of it.
Again, the Palestinians, their origin, the fact that they were told to leave, and, but the background of that is certainly something you don't hear in the media today. But the truth sometimes is hard to find, but really appreciated the background information that Dr. Wexler gave.
Right, exactly. You know, John Rosenstern has shared that on this program and on his program, but it's just Dr. Wexler like it passed over everybody's head. Then last night, when you were sharing that information, which I'd like for you to share again on the program today, it's like it began to stick in everybody's mind, and they realized what had actually happened here. And I'm not going to ask Donnie because I know he's overflowing.
I enjoyed it all.
I
Every
know it.
bit
I
of it.
did too. I rejoiced all night long thinking about what the Lord has done. So, Dr. Wexler, I'm going to ask you to start where you'd like to today. We are all so interested. And you said last night that you could go on, and I'm going to give you 2 hours today to do that. The panel will be interjecting themselves, asking questions. And if you out there have something you'd like to ask this man, you can email me right now, and I'll make sure I get your question on the program today. So, Dr. Wexler, I'm going to let you start it off. Pick it up kind of from where you went last night. Share again with the people concerning the Palestinians and where they came from.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm very pleased to meet with you today as well. We had a wonderful evening last night, and I was able to share a little bit, and obviously time was kind of short, so I'm very appreciative of the ability to shed a little more light on the subject. To those who did not see last night's program, we talked a little bit about Israel at the time of the declaration of state. Time was 1948, where the first Prime Minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, declared the State of Israel as a sovereign state of Israel. And that was a declaration that made Israel, again, a sovereign state after 2,000 years of not being able to be called a state. Israel, since the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, the second temple in Jerusalem, was taken into exile, meaning the people of Israel either died or taken to exile. However, many did stay in Israel, and for another 100 years, not in Jerusalem, mind you, they were in places in Israel known today as the holy cities of Israel. Yavne, near Tel Aviv of today, was the main city where Jewish life flourished. There was a false Messiah in Israel by the name of Bar Kokhba, who started a new revolt against the Roman occupation and lost. At that point, there was no Jewish rule over Israel. It became Roman rule. After the Roman rule came the Byzantine rule. In the 6th century, when Muhammad came to the scene, the group that came after him, led by Omar, conquered the entire Middle East and North Africa. They were in Israel, ruling Israel and Jerusalem for about 400 years. Then came the Crusaders. Israel became under the rule of the Crusaders for 100 years, and then they disappeared for greed and all kinds of internal issues that we may talk about at a later point. Then came the Mamelukes, and then came the Turks, who were the Ottoman Empire that ruled Israel until World War I, when they became a part of the German war for control over Europe and the Middle East. And of course, they lost. Where the issues became a little bit complicated, but in the same time very interesting, is that, and I'm sure those who watch the program know the Bible, so I won't bore you with a Bible class here, but when the exile after the destruction of the first temple came to an end with King Cyrus giving the green light for the Jews to come back to Israel with Nehemiah and Ezra, they did come back, and there was a resolution there. There was a proclamation. Go build the land, go build Jerusalem, it's yours. Then, of course, the Jews came back to Jerusalem. We know about the second temple. It wasn't as beautiful as the first temple. People who came back from the exile remembering still the first temple, actually, the Bible tells that they were crying because they remember the beautiful temple of the Solomonic era, and then a temple was built. Later on, another revolt in Israel, the Maccabees came to the scene, the Hasmonai family, and then the Romans became the rulers of the nation. They ruled the entire Middle East. And we know Jesus was weeping over the fate of Jerusalem, knowing that the Jews are going to bring it to demise because of their behavior in Israel. And the temple was destroyed again. And as I said a little bit earlier in the program, 100 years after the destruction of the temple, there was another revolt, and the Jews went into exile. The Jewish life in exile was a very hard period. The Jew was not allowed anywhere in the world to own land. They were not allowed to possess stores of any kind that allowed them to become wealthy or deal with legal issues. They knew, however, how to read and write, and they knew exactly how to figure out the dates. The Jewish calendar, the lunar calendar, was very familiar to them. And obviously, the landlords realized that they can use the Jew to manage their estates. And that made the Jew also the accountants of the estates, meaning also that they collected the tax. Who likes tax collectors? And they became hated by the population because, number one, they knew how to read and write, and they knew a lot of history. And not that they were boasting, but they were a little bit more educated. So people didn't like that. So pogroms, meaning open field on Jewish life and property, was a common thing. Jews were killed in Europe almost at every time during the last 2,000 years. Most people are familiar about the Spanish Inquisition. About 500 years ago, those in control in Spain, Ferdinand and Isabella made a decree, told the Jew either convert to Catholicism or die, or leave. Tremendous hardship at that particular time to those who lived in Spain. And Spain was the golden era of Jewish life. Many books, many sages lived in Spain, and it came to its end, the demise of Jewish population. But hardly anybody, unless you are a historian, know that there was hardly any country in Europe that did not expel Jews at one time or another from their land. Perhaps with the exception of Poland. And this is why in World War II, by the way, there were so many Jewish people living in Poland, and it was easy to kill them in Poland. You see, Nazi Germany was very practical, and they erected the death camps very close to where Jewish people lived. So 1.5 million Jews, or even more, died in Poland because the concentration of Jewish people in Poland, because of the tolerance of the people in Poland, allowed them to congregate there.
Dr. Wexler, excuse me for interrupting, but to add on what you're saying, if you go to Berlin today, Berlin, Germany, there is the Jewish Museum, one of the most moving museums that I've ever been to. But I thought the idea of the way they designed it was very smart in that they showed how involved German Jews were in the everyday life of Germany as doctors, lawyers, playwrights, aristocrats, editors, publishers, business owners, and they considered themselves Germans, and they were patriotic. They loved Germany. And then we find, of course, when Hitler takes power, they see the change, and unfortunately, not enough of them believes that he'll do what he'll do, and most don't get out, and most wind up in a concentration camp. So, in other words, every nation in Europe where there were Jews, they provided something good for that country.
There's no question in my mind that Jew contributed everywhere he went. Obviously, today we know that Jewish contribution, Israel contribution in high tech and everything that's going on is incredibly there, and everybody can tell what's going on. But you're talking about the time of enlightenment. The Jew started to assimilate because there were very hard times on the Jews in Europe. They decided to be like everybody else. And that's almost bring us to American Jewry today. Yesterday, somebody asked me, how come American Jews don't support Israel as much as some of the Christians? And maybe because they want to show that they're patriotic to America, and if they're also patriotic to Israel, that would make them some sort of, the duality might hurt them. Maybe yes, maybe no. I figure that it might be some contributing factor. But the Jew in America is, unlike the Jew in Israel, are like two different people. Yesterday I went to lunch with Brother Josh and his wife Bethany, and they asked me a little bit about myself, and I said, you know, we in Israel, people of Israel, I was born, raised, educated, served in the IDF. We are so different than Americans. So sometimes when I talk to Jewish people in America, I have a hard time identifying with them, and I'm a Jew. I told Josh that there's a phenomena that happens now. Jewish kids in different parts of the world have the yearning to come to Israel to serve in the IDF, in the Israeli army. And a few thousands actually served over the years. We call them lone soldiers because they don't have families in Israel.
Right.
It's not that they don't have families where they come from, but in Israel they don't have family. And we treat them with the utmost respect because they come and they volunteer and they don't have to, but they do. And 2 years ago, during the war with Gaza, there were two incidents, and I was there, of course. There was an announcement on television, radio, that one of the lone soldiers got killed. And he had no family in Israel. And there was a funeral, and his parents and immediate family were flown to Israel for the funeral because he requested to be buried in Jerusalem, in Mount Herzl. And the family came knowing that they would be probably the only family. There would be few people, maybe a handful of friends that he made in Israel. They came to the funeral. Tens of thousands of people.
Oh, wow.
In the area of 50,000 Israelis came to the funeral.
Amazing.
Another incident, and I know Americans and probably other people from around the world will appreciate it too. There was another incident where another lone soldier got killed from the area of Haifa. And he was a fan of the basketball team, or maybe the soccer team of Haifa. And when the team was not notified that he died, and they knew that he was a fan, they invited all their fans to the funeral. And again, tens of thousands of people. So why am I saying that? I know that people in America, Jewish people in America, It's obvious by the way they vote. I can't figure it out. But they don't think like us. You know, today I looked at the news from Israel, and there were some statistics. And it says that 87% of the people in Israel support Trump, President Trump. It also says in the same statistics that some 65% of the people of Israel think that President Obama was the worst president ever for Israel. So the question is, why is it happening? And why are the Jews not supporting?
Well, the way I see it, American Jews are predominantly secular Jews. They do not go to temple. They do not really observe the ancient rites of Judaism. They are just Jewish by birth. They tend to be extremely liberal. I don't know why, when history proves beyond a shadow of fact that this one group of people have been the most persecuted people on the entirety of human history. And I don't understand, like you, how that they could look at Israel and prefer the Arabs over their own brothers and sisters. And but it comes back to when you see them. You know, Brooklyn you've got a large concentration of Hasidic Jews. You see them everywhere, the long curls and all of that. And but when you get into Manhattan, you see a whole different type. They're lawyers, they're doctors, or whatever. And they really, and I've talked to some, and they really don't. They don't really care about Israel. Mm-hmm. And I just don't understand.
That's very true. Those in Manhattan and other places, secular humanism. That's the bottom line.
Yep.
Those with the curls and the dark coats and kippas, they believe in the land of Israel, but not in the state of Israel.
That's odd.
Major difference. The different agendas here.
Yes.
And one has to get into the root of what's going on to understand. Again, that's a class by itself. That's a semester. but to answer Francine's question about the Palestinian, about what happened, that's how the conversation that kind of went astray. In 200 years ago, a man by the name of Benjamin Theodore Herzl envisioned a country for the Jewish people. And the way he came about it was because he realized that the Jew is not protected. There was a trial, a blood libel trial in France, and he realized that the man was accused of treason. He was an army officer, and he didn't do anything wrong. So he decided to do something about it. He was a assimilated Jew. He was an enlightened Jew. I think he was a psychiatrist. And he had no affiliation. He definitely didn't have God as a motive or anything at all. But he realized that something has to happen. So he actually made it happen by creating a conference or a convention called the Zionist Convention. The first Zionist Convention was in 1895, and then there are a few others that came almost on an annual basis. And through that effort or the result of those conventions, Jews started to immigrate to Israel in the turn of the 19th century and, of course, in the beginning of the 20th century, such as my parents. They came to Israel as babies, actually not babies, but young children, in the turn of the 20th century. People started to come to Israel. And when people started to come to Israel, it was obvious that they have to cultivate the land. And we already know from their occupations in Europe, and none of them were farmers. They didn't know how to occupy the land. From historical documents, we know that Israel was desolate. People said that nothing grows there. Even worse, when the Ottoman Empire controlled Israel, they cut off every tree in Israel for fuel, for coal. So there were no trees there. And nothing grew in Israel. There were malaria, there were swamps. It wasn't livable. And Jews started to arrive to cultivate the land. And they came as communes. They created kibbutz. Kibbutz is a place where everybody shares everything and they kind of work together, and a socialistic idea, but not communistic. So they needed help. Obviously, they couldn't cultivate the land by themselves. And who are the neighbors of Israel? People who lived in the Ottoman Empire. Remember, as I said yesterday, there are no countries. Countries were divided in the Middle East only later on, like Iraq and Jordan and Syria. Those were not countries. There was just a big mass of land. So when the Jews came to Israel and they needed to cultivate the land and to live off the land, people who knew how to cultivate the land started to arrive to Israel from faraway lands, from what's today Iraq and Syria and Lebanon and Jordan. They knew how to cultivate the land, and they got jobs. They got jobs. If you ask these people then, who are they? They will tell you they came from places such as Syria of today and Lebanon or any other place. The word Palestinian didn't exist, but these people who came to work then remained in Israel. They stayed in Israel. And you ask them, if you ask these people or the grandchildren, who are you? They will tell you they are Palestinians. So they are not indigenous necessarily to the land of Israel. And whenever they say Palestinians, because we came from Palestina, and I mentioned yesterday in the program that the word Palestina first came by the Roman Empire after the destruction of Jerusalem, because they wanted to erase the name Israel or Judea from their lexicon. They called the area Palestina, Jerusalem Ilia Capitolina, and the reason they chose Palestina is because it was familiar to them from biblical time, because there were people called Philistines who lived in the shoreline south of Tel Aviv of today. But these people were Phoenicians mainly, who came from the islands of Greece, and they have no blood connection. The DNA is not as the Palestinians of today. It became very easy to associate for the Palestinians, for the Arabs, to call themselves Palestinians, such as to bring them back in history to the time where Israel became Palestina, and associate themselves even earlier time to the Philistines living in the shorelines of Israel. But this would be a grave mistake to associate these people with the Philistines of the Bible.
Exactly, and we got to take a quick break. We're going to be right back after the break.
Email your questions and comments about today's program to onair@jsm.org. Join Francis and Friends on Facebook, facebook.com/Francis Swigert.
Okay, Jim, you were discussing something with Dr. Wexler, right? Well, actually, during the break. I want to pick it up with that because the people need to know what was said.
Yes, this is beautiful. Last night he mentioned 1948 and the founding of Israel, and you mentioned it earlier in the program, and my mind immediately went to Isaiah 43 and the whole chapter, but the verse 5 and 6 says, "Fear not, for I am with you. I will bring your seed from the east, and I will gather you from the west. I will say to the north, give up, and to the south, do not keep back. Bring my sons from afar, and my daughters from the end of the earth." This happened. This happened in mine and your lifetime. 700 years before Christ was born, he wrote this, Isaiah wrote this down, and we live to see it happen.
Well, praise the Lord. Yes.
Amen.
Yes.
This is a prophecy, and we live in some very interesting times. Just before the break, we talked a little bit about the declaration of the State of Israel. We also mentioned that Palestinians, most of them anyways, were people who came to Israel to work and stayed in Israel. In 1947, the United Nation of then, called the League of Nations, decided to divide the state of Israel to two parts, Palestinian, Muslim part and Jewish part. Just before we go into it, perhaps we can get a map of the Middle East, map number one, on the screen. Is it possible? We're looking at the map of the Middle East. This entire area there of the Middle East, you can hardly see Israel, unless you can zoom, only tells you how minute and how small Israel is on this map. This entire area was the Ottoman Empire, and after World War I, when the Ottoman Empire came to its end, the British Empire and the French controlled this entire area of the Middle East. And they decided to divide the control over this entire area that you see on the screen between those two, French and Great Britain took a big part of it as well. Israel became a part of what the Brits had in the Middle East, and it's called the Mandate, the British Mandate of the State of Israel. At that time, Arabs and Jews lived together in Israel, about equal numbers, 650,000 Arabs, 650,000 Jews, and Arabs didn't like to see the migration of Jews coming to Israel with the Zionist idea. And lo and behold, World War II took place, and some 6 million brothers and sisters, Jewish people, got killed in Europe systematically by the Nazi regime, Hitler. I think the world took a little bit pity over Israel, the yearning for land, have Israel come back again, became an issue. There was also revolts within Israel, and at one point there was a decision to divide Israel and give part of it to the Muslims and part of it to the Jews. Can I have the other map, the map of...
Could we put that right back? Well, you've got it now. I wanted the people to actually see what the small land of Israel and compared to all the other Arab lands around it. Is it possible to get that back, zoom in on it real quick? I want the folks to get a... There it is, that little pinkish-looking area. It's the land of Israel.
Look at Jordan and that little, in that
yeah,
reddish
it's right
looking
beside
pink.
Jordan.
It's right
but
beside
look
Jordan.
at all of the other land that the Arabs own and have. And the question that you would have to ask is, why is that little space of ground so important to them?
It's well, throughout history, it was important. First of all, because God decided to dwell in the land, gave it to Abraham, told Abraham, "I will give it to you and to your all the generation that will come." He also said to him, "I will bless you, and I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you, and to you I will bless all the nations." And today we see with the high tech in Israel and the ingenuity of the Israelis and the way they come up with all kinds of technological advances, we actually turned deserts into gardens, not only in Israel, but all over the world. But what I'm coming at now is that in 1947, the world had it. Jews were not allowed to come to Israel, to immigrate to Israel, but the British mandate throughout World War II. In other words, millions of people could have been saved and brought to Israel, but there weren't visas issued by those who controlled the land. Great Britain did not allow Jews to immigrate to Israel during the Holocaust. In other words, Jews were standing in line to go into gas chambers and crematorium where they could have been on boats going to Israel, their land.
That's exactly.
And the Balfour Declaration actually said, this is the land of by the Foreign Ministry of England, said this is the land of the Jews. And this is the land the Jews will have. And during World War II, when 6 million people were brought into their demise, they weren't allowed to come to Israel.
Okay, quickly, because it's in the news so much about a two-state. How, in that little bitty tiny piece of land, would you put a two-state nation there?
Well, there's no two states because one
That's
is
right.
real, one is a figment of imagination. There was never a Palestinian state, so there's no place for it to begin with.
Right.
Number two, let's assume now, which is ridiculous to assume, let's assume that there is a place for it. Then you have to have two people agree to live in peace with each other. When Israel agrees to live in peace with its neighbors, with her neighbors, the Arabs say that Israel doesn't have the right to exist. How do you divide the land between two people that one says to the other, you have no right not only to be here, but to exist?
Right.
Well, the truth of it is they want all of it. They don't want Israel to have any part of it, the Arabs. But I was pointing out to the people, all of that other landmass that's everywhere, the Palestinians could go in there without any problem at all. And why is it they won't do it? Now, we know the answer, because they do not want Israel to exist. All right, let me ask you this question that I've had several. It says, are the Israeli people in agreement with President Trump wanting to move the United States Embassy to Jerusalem? And do you think it will actually happen?
Well, I hope and pray that it will happen, because Israel is the capital of Israel since 3,000 years ago. And in our world, when a country has a capital, then states that have relationships with that particular country have their embassies in their capitals. So to have capitals in Tel Aviv instead of Jerusalem is obscene. It's saying to the Arabs, you have the right over Jerusalem. And the reason I came here this weekend was basically as a result of two things that happened lately. One was the UNESCO proclamation that Jews have no right to Jerusalem, and the other one was America itself under the last administration that threw Israel under the bus in the United Nations Security Council. What right does anybody have to tell a sovereign country, which its capital is Jerusalem, not to have embassies move into their cities? That just doesn't make any sense. You know, I know that we don't have much time here either, but you know, there are two incidents in the Bible, and we all believe in the Bible, and we make the Bible to be the book that we draw most of our information from. We also know that in real estate, you have to have a deed. There are two deeds mentioned in the Bible, one by Abraham buying the burial place for his wife Sarah in Hebron, which is in the West Bank, and the other one, King David, buying the Temple Mount from the Aruna, the Evosite, and this was where the temple was. Ironically, these two places are now Muslim. So if one has a deed, and the Bible records it, and we all know the derivative of where this transaction came from, how is it that we have an argument today? So we have an argument with people that don't believe in the Bible. Well, that's an issue by itself. But let me go back a little bit to your question, Francine, before. In 1947, there was a decision to divide the country. Can I have map number 2? So the idea was to have the land divided between Muslims and Jews. The green parts that you see on your screens now was going to be given to the Arabs, and the yellow was given to the Jew. I want to pay your attention to the bottom of the map. It's the Negev desert that's hardly inhabitable. So this big part of the map is really not a place. Mind you, today it's all garden, but at that time it was just desolate land, and the rest of it was given to the Jew. The Jew after World War II and after 2,000 years of history of not having a country, were dancing in the street. They were clapping their hands. They were praising God. And they said, this is the Messianic era. We're going to have our country back, although it wasn't much of a country. And you can see the area in the middle, which is pinky. That's the area of Jerusalem and the vicinity. That was going to be international. I don't know how you make a city international, especially when nobody wants to give any explanation to that. So that didn't make any sense to begin with, but the Jews agreed to that. The Arabs did not. So when David Ben-Gurion in 1948, in the year 1948, declared the State of Israel as a sovereign state of Israel, the Arabs warned him ahead of time that they're going to attack Israel. And when he made that declaration, Israel was under attack, by land, by air. And remember, until that time, Israel was under British mandate. There was no army. Jews were not allowed to carry any arms. You can get rid of the map now. Jews were not allowed to carry arms. They weren't allowed to protect themselves. It was very difficult to protect Israel because it was attacked from every country in the Middle East, even countries that did not border Israel. Even Morocco, which is in the Atlantic Ocean, sent armed forces to Israel. Iraq sent armed forces to help to liberate Israel and to make it one. What does it mean, make it one? Make it all Muslim. So I believe that if the Bible was not canonized, this story of the independence war in Israel would have been another chapter in the Bible, because I can't explain it. I don't think anybody can explain it. 650,000 Jews lived in Israel, of which I guess about 150,000 could lift arms of any kind and fight. They fought with pistols against tanks, and they fought with sticks against very well-armed soldiers. And lo and behold, Israel won. Israel won. The Arabs asked for a ceasefire. And that ceasefire actually divided Jerusalem to two.
And let me, Dr. Wexler, the reason that Israel survived, the reason that Israel won the war, the 1948 war, is because God was fighting for that.
There's no question about it.
Yeah,
that's why
God
I said
himself, his angels.
that's what I said. If there was another, if the Bible wasn't canonized, there would be another book. But what happened during that war, there was a ceasefire and Jerusalem became divided. But you see, when the war started, the advancing armed forces of the Arab nations warned the Arabs living in Israel. And remember the number. There were about 650,000 Arabs living in Israel, and there were about a similar number of Jews living in Israel. The Arab advancing armies told the Arabs living in Israel, in order for you to be safe, you need to leave your homes and go out of your way, and for a little while you will be staying in camps and shelters. And it's obvious that our armed forces are going to destroy the Jewish defense, I wouldn't even call it army, soldiers. And by the time we finish, you come back and you claim your homes, and we will divide the spoil. Even the Jewish homes will be given to everybody that left the country. My friends, those who listen to me now, about half the people, Arabs, listened to this advice, and they left Israel. Half of them did not leave. They stayed in Israel. And they stayed in Israel during the War of Independence. Two things happened since then. Those Arabs who stayed in Israel are Israeli citizens today. They had the same rights and they had the same privileges as I do. They carry the same ID cards, and they have the same passports. They can come and go as they wish. They can even serve in the army if they're so inclined, and some of them do. What happened to the other half? They went out of the country, and they became refugees. This happened 70 years ago almost, 69 years ago. You know what happened to them today? They're still refugees. How could people be refugees 69 years? How is it possible for people to be born outside of Israel and call themselves still refugees? And their children are refugees, and their grandchildren are refugees. It started with about 350,000. Today they're close to 10 million. And when they talk about two nations, the solution, when they talk about that, they also say they have the right of return, not of the 350 original that left, but now for 10 million. So obviously they don't mean business here. They don't mean to come back to Israel to reclaim the land. It's not an issue of land. As Francine said before, look at the mass of land. What do they need this speck of land there? It's meaningless. What we are talking here is spiritual warfare.
Amen.
That's exactly right. Okay, do you, Dr. Wexler, do you believe that President Trump will keep his promise to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and recognize Jerusalem as the true capital, which it is, of Israel? And what do you feel the ramifications of that would be for America or Israel if it really does take place?
Well, President Trump made many, many promises during the campaign. And to my astonishment and surprise, he kept them all. He fulfilled every one of them. He's getting his adversaries fighting with him right, left, and center. If he kept everything else he said, I have no reason to believe that he's not going to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and that would be the right thing to do. I want you to understand also that there's a law in the United States that actually placed the embassy in Jerusalem. This is a law that passed the Hill in 1995. In order not to have the embassy in Jerusalem, every year a presiding president, needs to actually sign a waiver. Why not to deliver the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem? So all President Trump has to do is not to sign a waiver. The law is already there.
And the American Christians are going to be praying in that direction. All right, how damaging long-term will be what former President Obama did in January in pushing all the UN resolutions over the settlement issue?
Well, you asked me a question before about two-state solution. I said I don't see two states because one is figment of imagination, the other one is real. So where are those settlements? And besides, what is a settlement? Some of these settlements are big cities in Israel. The settlement, so-called settlement of Ariel, has close to 50,000 people living there, and there's a full-fledged accredited university right there. Is this a settlement? Settlement, quote-unquote, near Hebron, Kiryat Arba, also about 40,000. Ma'ale Domim, another city, about 35,000 people. I don't see an issue here. And I believe that many so-called Palestinians in the West Bank don't see an issue here. I guess that if you ask some Palestinians what they prefer, they probably prefer a status quo. To live under rule of Israel, you ask any Arab living in Israel today if he likes the idea of having Palestinian rule over him. I would like to venture that they would say no. You see, we have a democracy in Israel. There are 7 million people living in Israel, and to all those who are watching now, and probably do not know, there are 1 million Arabs. 20% of Israel are Muslims, Arabs, not just Muslim, also Christians among them, but mostly Muslims. They have full representation in the Knesset. Knesset is the Israeli government. They vote. It is actually today the third or fourth largest party in the state of Israel. One of the production people here in the station told me that he was from South Africa. And I said to him, do you know that in South Africa they accused Israel for being an apartheid state? And he said, yeah, I know, and he put his eyes down. And I said, do you think Israel is an apartheid state? And he said, how could it be? And he was absolutely right. Arabs in Israel have all the privileges that every Jew has in Israel. If they have a choice, and I can't speak on their behalf, but I assume if they had a choice to be under some sort of a dictatorship that happens everywhere else in the Arab world, even those that call themselves democracies, and you ask them, would you prefer Israel over the others? I would like to guess that they would say no, because they have everything. So those who listen to radio worldwide, those that watch television, ABC, CB, I don't want to call names anymore, you get false information. You come to a program like this, you get more than you need in order to know what's going on. You see, Israel gets it from all directions, even from the Jews, as some of you that were in tune before, even Jews are sometimes go against Israel, especially in the United States of America. The information given is the wrong information. The information that makes you feel that you don't want to go to Israel to visit because Israel is under threat at all times. I'll give you an example. There was a war in Israel 2 years ago with the Gaza situation, and I had a seminar in Jerusalem. People were afraid. No, actually, people were not afraid to come. Those who registered wanted to come, but their families told them, how can you? You know, you're risking your life. And many, many calls arrived in my office in Israel saying people are afraid to come. And I actually got on the phone and I said to, and Skype too, and said to them, don't worry, there's nothing wrong here. And people came, and we have hundreds of people during the war in Israel, in Jerusalem, in the seminar. And we asked them a few days later, how do you feel? Said, well, we feel terrific. What about the war? Said, the only time we know about the war is when we come in the evening to the hotel room and we turn on the television and we see on world media that there's a war. We didn't feel anything in Jerusalem. I don't lie to you now. There was no feel of any threat. There was no feel of anything at all. There were 6,000 missiles shot at Israel during that particular month and a half war in Gaza. None hit target. So what Francine said before, God is in action.
Right.
And actually, I'm here to tell you that there's going to be an event in Israel, June 19th to the 29th, where we're going to sign a proclamation on the Temple Mount, proclaiming that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, past, present, and future. Those who watch and want to put their signature on this proclamation, I invite you to come. I know that I can give you much information about how to register, but if you notice under my name on the screen, there's a website. Maybe you can go into the website. It's www.heritagestudyprograms.com. Or if you miss it, perhaps you call the ministry here and they'll direct you into the right place. Please come to Jerusalem. Be part of history. Put your signature into the cloth and sign if you believe that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. And I want to believe that those who watch this program, with the exception of those that methodically watch the program in order to curse the program, are believers. And they know that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel and cannot be divided, and it will not be divided.
Amen.
That's it,
Amen.
and we got to go to a quick break. We're going to be right back after the break, continuing with the Dr. Wexler, and I'll allow you right after the break to give a little more information right at the beginning when we come back on the air concerning about what you're discussing. We're going to be right back, and we will be taking your calls. But they have to be questions directed to Dr. Wexler, and what we're discussing today, they have to be short and they have to be quick because we're going to be discussing other things with Dr. Wexler ourselves during the next half of the program. We'll be right back.
Truth. Sometimes it's hard to find. That's why there's Francis and Friends. Previous Francis and Friends programs are available online at sunlifetv.com.
All right, we're back, and I'll ask you a question. This email, Donna, he was talking about, too, how much they enjoyed your program on Saturday night. But, Dr. Wexler, you mentioned a trip to Israel in June, and FWC members picked up information in the foyer. Does this information, do you have that on the web where people that are not here can access it?
Yes. If people go to the event website, it would be www.heritagestudyprograms.com, and they can access all the information. And I urge everybody to come. If you're a believer, if you think Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and you want to put your signature on such a proclamation that declares Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, then you need to be with us. And I hope you can make it. I know there's some incentives now for the next week or so. So if you go on the website or you call the numbers that you will find in the website, you will be able to register. And I'm looking to have people from different parts of the world, and especially from the groups that are watching this program now. It will be an interesting point in history. And we will also have a Bible class on location in different places, and we'll connect a timeline, history timeline, to the Bible. So it's not just going to be an event in Jerusalem, but we will actually visit all the parts in Israel connecting to the Bible.
Okay, what do you think will be the impact politically as well as spiritually if President Trump does move the United States Embassy to Jerusalem?
Well, first and foremost, I believe the embassy has to be in Jerusalem. Number two, I don't think anything critical is going to happen. I think that when you scream bloody murder and you will do this, that, and that, you know, it reminds me of kids in kindergarten. Hold me back because I'm going to blow your face. Nothing's going to happen. It needs to be in Jerusalem. It will be in Jerusalem. And if America shows the way, then all the other nations in the world will follow suit. Look, the designated place for the embassy in Jerusalem is not even in a disputed area. You know, when the Muslims are talking now about the two-state solutions, I don't think we should even refer to them as two states. But even if we did, it wouldn't be in their part of the two-state solution. It will be in the part that everybody agrees is Jewish Jerusalem. So there's no argument here. It needs to be there, it will be there, and that's it. Those who are afraid, I can't tell you what to do. But Israel, throughout the Bible, those who were afraid never made it. It was Gideon that said, I don't need more than 300 people. And when they came, they won. And it was always, you know, the little against the biggest. And the weak always won because God was in his side. And that's it. It's David and Goliath. Look, we have, I don't know, 400 million people, neighbors of Israel. Israel has 7 million. 1 million in Israel are Arabs. I don't think it's a big issue. I really don't. You know what makes it a big issue? The media. And they have an agenda. So if you let go and you listen to Sun Broadcasting or any Christian associated media, and you get the truth. It's biblical truth. You believe in the Bible. Let this be your witness. Jerusalem is the capital of Israel from 3,000 years ago. You believe in that?
That's
if
it.
you do, then there's no question about it. If you don't believe in it, then I can't tell you what to do. But if you believe that Jerusalem is the capital, then embassy should be there.
All right, let's go to Bob in Texas. And Bob, you have a quick question for Dr. Wexler?
Yes, Dr. Wexler, you're telling one side of what's going on in Israel. God has placed in my heart to learn some truths about Israel. And number one is Israel has now become the number one terrorist state in the Middle East.
Oh.
They have killed thousands of Palestinians. They have bulldozed down 48,000 Palestinian homes. They've stolen land from Palestinian people. And they built over 231 illegal settlements in Palestine. I want to know is one question. How can I support a terrorist state like Israel that is destabilizing the Middle East? And why don't the Christians of the United States learn the truth about Israel?
Well, you do know the truth, Bob. You're the one that's in serious error here. Donnie, before Dr. West answers, I'm going to let you say something.
He's crazy. Israel.
He's apparently listening to the news media and believing what he's hearing.
The terrorist state is the Palestinians.
He's listening to the Palestinians.
In Israel right now, Jews walking down the street are getting stabbed. Just stabbed.
That's
People
right.
walking up to them and stabbing them. And it's not Germans or Swedish people, it's Arabs. But Dr. Wexler can answer a lot better than I can.
I think the question was, how can you support Israel? I don't think you should, because you got it all wrong. So no matter what I'm going to say here, it's not going to change your mind.
Right. I agree.
So I will pray for you. I will tell you that you have to get your information from different sources. And perhaps the best thing for you to do is to join me in Israel on June 19. I guess you haven't been to Israel, because if you were, you wouldn't have asked that question or give us your understanding of what's going on. I would welcome you. I'll actually wait for you at the airport and shake your hand and personally guide you to show you what Israel is all about.
First of all, no true Christian would make a statement like this.
What nationality are you, Bob? Bob, are you there? I guess
He's American. He's from Texas. He's an American.
Okay.
He's a
Let's
confused
take our next
American.
question real quick. Josh from Texas. Welcome to Sun Life Broadcasting. You have a quick question or comment?
Yes, Sister Francis. First of all, I totally disagree with Bob, and obviously Bob doesn't know his Bible, and I don't know how he can call himself a Christian, because that is Antichrist, the statement that he just made. Dr. Wexler, I just want to first of all ask you, as an honor to me, to please carry a blessing for me to the nation of Israel. Because the Lord God says, those who bless Israel, he will bless, and those who curse Israel, he will curse. And Genesis 3:19, Dr. Wexler, is what I had on my mind to share with you, is that Jacob, when he came out of Padan Haram, he also bought a parcel of land from Hamor at the hand of his children. He was the father of Shechem. And also, too, I wanted to comment about John Kerry, the former Secretary of State, whenever he came to Israel and gave his speech saying that Israel could not be a Jewish state as well as a democratic state. He was wrong, because what he was trying to do there was establish a religion. And furthermore, we will be keeping a close eye on our new Secretary of State. And I would say very kindly to our president that we elected, President Trump, we stand with Israel, and we will bless Israel. And let there be no doubt that Isaiah 41, 8 through 11 will also come to pass, when God will make a full end to all of the enemies of the nation of Israel. God bless you, Dr. Wexler, and God bless the nation of Israel.
Thank you very much. I can't speak on behalf of Israel, but personally, I would like to thank you, and I wish you speak about this with all your friends and wherever you go. Thank you very much.
All right, Thomas from North Dakota. Welcome to Sun Life Broadcasting. You have a quick question or comment?
Yes, I do. And I agree 100% with the last caller that that Bob from Texas is way out of line. He doesn't know the Bible at all, and he needs to get his eyes open. He's blind as a bat. But my question for Dr. Wexler, and we love him, we love the people of Israel from North Dakota. I speak for them and the Christian people up here. I'm wondering that there is, all the plans are already made for the new temple in Jerusalem, but the temple is going to probably set where the Rock of the Dome is, which is supposed to be a so-called Muslim holy place. And I'm wondering how that's going to take place, because if we destroy that Rock of the Dome, which it should be, it's going to cause a major catastrophe with the people. So I want to know, Dr. Wexler, how they're going to be able to build that new temple on that spot. Thank you.
Thank you. The truth of the matter is that, yes, there is an organization in Jerusalem that is working on the utensils that were going to be used again in time when Third Temple is being established or will be established. We do not know when the Third Temple will be. I believe personally it's going to be by signs and wonder. I don't believe anybody in Israel believed that by force destroying anything that is in existence is the way to go about erecting the temple. I would leave it to God, and I would like to believe that God, as He fulfilled all His promises, and if we believe in the Bible and we look at Ezekiel describing, actually give the dimensions and everything else, it's going to happen. But I believe it's going to happen by signs and wonders.
All right. Thank you for that, Thomas. And before I go to our next caller, the question is, has Israel, by the law of the United Nations, are you required to take any immigrants into your country?
When you say immigrants, you mean refugees?
I'm sure that's what they mean.
Uh-huh. Well, let me elaborate a little bit, because our friend here mentioned before about the people that will be gathering from the four corners of the earth. Again, you know, let me say that. In 1948, when Israel was declared, there were only 650,000 people living in Israel. That's Jewish people. In a mere 3 years, the population of Israel was over 3 million. In 3 years, the country basically became 3 times its size in population. Let me ask those who are watching, how does a country provide for so many people who come in such a short period of time and give them houses, food, jobs? This is of God. There's just no explanation.
Absolutely.
And when I spoke earlier in the program, if you were listening to me, the Muslims that were asked by their friends to leave Israel so not to be in the line of fire, they are still refugees. And those who came to Israel became wonderful people in Israel that went to school, had homes, children. The place is flourishing. And you may say, well, this happened some 50, 60 years ago. Is it still happening? Well, my friends, those who don't know, Jews were wandering all over the world,
Yes.
even in places that you can't imagine, in Africa, in Ethiopia, black Jews.
Yes.
Ironically, we say those are probably the descendants of King Solomon and Queen Sheba.
Yeah.
And they knew the Bible. They knew God. They knew very little about modern Judaism, but they kept their traditions from 2,000 years ago. And 30 or 35 years ago, country of Ethiopia became in turmoil. there was internal wars. People got killed there, right, left, and center. And the weaker ones, the minorities, were caught in between. The state of Israel found out about it. And they decided to bring the entire population of Jewish people from Ethiopia to Israel, refugees. Miracles took place in a war-torn country, Ethiopia. Airplanes stripped of their seats to push in as many people as possible, landed in the middle of the desert to take people from Ethiopia. They didn't know what modernization is all about. Never lived in a house, never saw running water in houses, never used toilets, never saw money. They used bartering systems, let alone banks and checks. They brought them to Israel. Tens of thousands, taught them Hebrew, the language of Israel, taught them how to live their lives, educated the children, gave them houses, taught them how to write checks and how to apply for a mortgage. These people came with nothing, not a coin in their pockets. Israel supplied everything that they needed. It was, I assume, a major culture shock to so many of them, especially the older generation. But you know, my friends, all those who are watching me now, 30 years later, among the Ethiopian population in Israel, there are lawyers, there are doctors, there are high-ranking officers in the Israeli army. And lo and behold, 3 years ago, Miss Israel was an Ethiopian, beautiful young woman. So, talk about refugees, that's the place for refugees. But you might say to me, Dr. Wexler, you're a Jew and you talk about Jewish refugees, and you guys stick for each other. No, my friends. There are people that came from Africa that are not Jews, and they are refugees in Israel, and they are being taken care of. My friends, there are churches in Tel Aviv, in Netanya, in Ashdod, in Jerusalem, of black people who are not Jewish, who came to Israel because of misery in their lands, because hardship drove them in droves to Israel, and Israel is taking care of them. I hope that answers the question.
That's
Yes.
fantastic. Y'all
That's
have
awesome.
anything more?
You know, I read
Questions?
there was a book I read it many years, 20 years ago probably, entitled "The Making and Unmaking of a Mossad Officer," and in that book he told how they got in there and got those Ethiopian people out. It was very, very interesting how they did. And yes, you're right, God did help them do what they did.
Yes.
Dave, okay. Question quickly. The year of Jubilee. You mentioned it last night in your discussion, and they're wondering, what is the year of Jubilee, and would you explain a little more about it?
Yes, praise God. The year of Jubilee described in the Bible is different than the year of Jubilee that we discussed last night. A year of Jubilee in the Bible meant that every tribe of Israel that had inheritance in the land was going to receive back lands that they lost. Mortgages of the Bible meant that people gave their land because of debts. The year of Jubilee, as most of you probably know, was the returning of the debts, and the land of Israel came to the original owners. Every tribe had their part in Israel, and it was very important to keep the land of the tribes. Today, however, the year of Jubilee is the year that Jerusalem got reunited. Those who watched before, I explained that in the 1948 war, the War of Independence, Jerusalem was divided between East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem. West Jerusalem was Jewish, East Jerusalem was Muslim. Jews were not allowed to come to the holy places in East Jerusalem, and all the holy places were in East Jerusalem, such as the Western Wall or the Wailing Wall, Temple Mount. Christians had a hard time to go there too, although they were a little bit more lenient to Christians. In 1967, the 6 Days War broke out in Israel, and the reason for the 6 Days War was that the Syrians in the north decided to dry up the Jordan River, which is the only source of water in Israel. And down south, Abdul Nasser, at the time president of Egypt, decided to cut off the waterways to Israel from the south, meaning Israel was going to suffocate. There was no sustenance, not water, no goods, and the war took place. During that war, Jerusalem was liberated. Remember, before 1948, Jews lived in the east part of Jerusalem as well as Muslims. The old city of Jerusalem, can I have a map of the old city? The old city of Jerusalem was divided and still is divided to 4 quarters. The city is divided to Armenian quarter, to Christian quarter, to Muslim quarter, and to Jewish quarter. The Jewish quarter was totally destroyed. This is why today when you come to Jerusalem, this quarter is brand new because it had to be rebuilt. Everything was totally destroyed there. So in 1967, Jerusalem was liberated and reunified. 1967. That was 50 years ago. Now we're in 2017, and we celebrate the Jubilee year of the reunification of the city of Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. This is a part of the prophecy that we all, Jew and Christians, believe as the footsteps of the coming of Messiah. So Jerusalem now is reunited, the state of Israel is there, and this is, as we mentioned before, the capital of Israel. So when I invited you before, or those who are now tuning into the program for the first time, we are going to celebrate the Jubilee in Jerusalem, and the highlight will be the signing of the proclamation declaring Jerusalem as the capital of Israel since the time of King David until today. This is the year of Jubilee.
That's great. Okay, we got to go to another quick break. We'll be right back after the break.
Find out more about Francis and Friends on our website, francisandfriends.com. We're tackling issues affecting the modern church. If you have a suggestion for a future program, send it to onair@jsm.org.
All right, Dr. Wesley, this email says, as an Iranian-born, I would like to apologize for the ignorance of most of the Iranians, in which they don't know the real history of Israel. I was taught in Iran that the Jews and Israel are not God's chosen people and that they shouldn't be there. I used to believe all of it, but once I gave my heart to Christ and started to actually study the history and read the Bible, it all became so clear to me. As long as there are mullahs in Iran, there won't be peace between my country and Israel. And one reason that these mullahs are afraid to let Christians come in and bring Christianity into Iran is that the people will finally find out the truth about the demonic religion that they call Islam, and will open their eyes and finally see the truth. Thank you, Dr. Wexler, for speaking the truth. And I wish people here in the United States would find out the real history about the Palestinians and Israel. That's
Excellent.
great.
Excellent.
I
Excellent.
think the call that we got from Bob in Texas is an indication of the misinformation, the attempts at changing history. I think that was a result of
Yeah, but I'm going to take it further than that. The man that doesn't know the Bible.
Yeah.
If you call yourself a Christian and you read the Bible, you understand very clearly that Israel is God's land.
Amen.
Jerusalem is God's city.
Right.
So I question everything about the man.
Right. It's a replacement theology. But I'd like to refer to this woman that just called from Iran. It's very interesting. Again, you know, one has to know the Bible in order to understand everything that's happening. Everything relates to the Bible. Mm-hmm. Moses, when took the Israelites out of Egypt, fought Amalek. Clearly, God said, destroy Amalek from the face of the earth. And it became one of the 613 commandments given to the nation of Israel. Once Israel was established and King Saul became the king of Israel, the first thing that he had to do is go to war against Amalek. And Samuel actually commanded him to do so. And he did. King Saul went and waged war against Amalek. We know the Bible, we know what happened. He saved the king and brought him back. Also, he took a lot of the spoils. What was the name of the king? Do you remember what was the name of the king? I won't put you to the test. His name was Agag. King Agag. He brought King Agag. Of course, the prophet Samuel made sure that he ended the job. But let's jump now a few hundred years. Let's go to Iran. Iran back then was Persia. Persia was the biggest empire ever existed on the face of the earth. They controlled the entire known world. They controlled specifically 127 nations in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, everywhere. Now, we know the story of Haman. Anybody remembers his last name, his family name? His name was Agag. In other words, he was an Amalekite. So the spirit of Amalek went from the desert to Persia of the time. Haman the Agagite decreed the death of the Jews. There's a holiday we celebrate in Israel called Purim. Purim is a day where the Jews were supposed to be killed throughout the world. Now listen to what I said before. Persia controlled the entire world. Mm-hmm. So if that decree was about to take place, there would be no Jew left in the world. So this is the greatest miracle ever. Now, when you ask yourself, if there was a man second to the king called Agag, what happened to the rest of the family? We know that his children were hung, but there's got to be a lot of other Amalekites. Well, we know that they are, because today the spirit of Amalek is in Iran. Naturally, there are great people in Iran. We know that for a fact, because until the mullahs came, Israel and Persia of the time were in great relations. Great relations. So came the spirit of Amalek and destroyed it. When I mentioned in the earlier part of the show that land is not the issue, two-state solution is not the issue, it's a spiritual warfare.
It's a spiritual warfare.
And those who wanted to kill Israel at the time of Persia, of Haman's time and Queen Esther, those are the same people with the same spirit that want to kill Israel today. So the Amalekite are those that Israel lives among. We live in a very tough neighborhood. This is a rough hood, as they call it here sometimes. And we fight a spiritual warfare. No land will appease anybody. In fact, Israel is not the only enemy. America is the big Satan, Israel is small Satan. We all are next in line.
Gives all the more importance for the statement for such a time as this.
That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you host the show, and if I may, I'd like to say something about Queen Esther. Can I?
Yes, sure.
Queen Esther was fascinating. You know, we look at her and we ask, how is it Mordecai came to the queen and said, you have to talk to your husband about the decree? And she said, no, I can't, I'm afraid. It looks like she's a Barbie doll. she's beautiful, we know it from the Bible. But we know something else. And this is something when you come to Israel, and I invited many of you to come to Israel to sign the proclamation, but I'll teach you how to read the Bible. Because you can read the Bible and you can read the Bible. So listen to the story of Queen Esther from the book of Esther. We know a few things from the chapter 1 of the book. We know that there was a king. I know that he was very short-fused. His wife didn't come and he destroyed her. We know about Haman that he was very vain, because when the king asked him, what shall I do to the man that I like most? He said, well, you should give him the best clothes and put him on a horse and parade him in town. He was vain. What do we know about the story that took place after that? Mordecai came to Esther and said, you need to talk to your husband. She said, no, I want our people to fast. I need some time. Then she goes to her husband. What does she say? If you love me, I would like to have a dinner with you. Of course I love you. And then she says to him, and he's happy. He's really happy. And then she says to him, but if you don't mind, I'd like to bring a guest. He's less happy. Well, tomorrow is Valentine's Day, you know. We all kind of in the euphoria of love. So now he's less happy. And who do you want to bring? Haman. Okay, you're the queen, I'll bring him. So Haman comes, and they have a wonderful evening. I don't think the king really enjoyed that evening, but Haman was at his best. And he comes home and he's happy. What does the king say to Esther? What would you like now? So if you don't mind, I would like another party with you tomorrow. And now he's happy again. But then she says to him, but I'd like to bring Haman again. Well, we know about the king what? That he's very short-fused. You want to bring Haman to the party? Okay. Now I think he's ready to kill the man without really knowing what the plot is. I'm having dinner with my wife and you want another man here? When she tells him that this man, Haman, wants to kill her and the rest of her family and the rest of the Jewish people, it doesn't take long for the king to do what he needed to do, to destroy and change the decree. Now, why am I saying what I said? Remember, in the old days, the woman, queen or no queen, was secondary. She didn't have much to do in politics. So if her uncle, Mordecai, would say to her, go talk to the king about the decree, tell him to change the decree, chances are that that King Cyrus would say to her, mind your own business, lady. You're the queen, all right, but you can't tell me how to rule the land. But she was a woman, and she knew how to treat her husband. And she brought him to a point of boiling. So the Bible is a fascinating book.
Amen.
Yes, it is.
And when we know how to read it, we know the intricate parts. And when you come to Israel, if you come, and I wish you do, I will go to other passages and other books in the Bible, Old and New Testament, and we'll show you how to read it so you can understand the background of the stories and the parable of Jesus Christ and the entire stories. I hope you come to Israel.
Okay. Let's go to Edith. And Edith, a quick question, please. Do you have one for Dr. Wexler?
Yes, I do. I would like to know if he has a place on his website for signing your signature that you believe that the embassy should be taken from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Well, we will start it on location, and once we have the ceremony in Jerusalem, it will be also available on the website, and people will be able to put their names on the website, but not before we open it up in a ceremony in Jerusalem.
What would that website be, Dr. Webster?
heritagestudyprograms.com. I think it's on the screen at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Edith. And quickly, we're going to Tommy. Tommy, you have a real quick question for Dr. Wexler.
Yes, Dr. Wexler, honor talking with you, asking a question. I wanted to ask you about the Camp David Accords, where basically, Israel traded land for peace with Egypt back in the late 70s. Was this a good idea in your opinion? Has it worked out? And was Prime Minister Bacon, do you think he did the right thing in this regard?
It was a very good idea indeed. Sinai, the Sinai Peninsula is not a part of the Holy Land. It's not a part of Israel. It was a good buffer zone between us and the Egyptians when we had the war with Egypt. But we had Israel. We had no reason to keep it, and in fact, the peace accord signed with Egypt are holding very well. There's tremendous cooperation between Israel and Egypt at the moment, so it's withstood the test of history, and I think that was the right thing to do. It is not part of the Holy Land. It's not part of the Promised Land. It's not a biblical part of Israel.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wexler.
And Dennis in Tennessee, quickly, you have a question for Dr. Wexler?
Yes. My question for Dr. Wexler would be, Christians today that travel to Israel with a visa passport, are they allowed to become citizens of Israel and live in the state of Israel? And one other quick question, what does he believe that the Eastern Gate on the Temple Mount that is sealed up today, does he believe that that would be the Eastern Gate that is spoken of in the Bible, the church returning with Christ? And what is his feeling towards the existence of the Eastern Gate?
The first part of the question, for Christians to immigrate to Israel and become citizens, the answer is yes, but it requires a procedure like any other country. You come to Israel, you try to immigrate. It's much easier to immigrate to Israel when you're a Jew because the Jew has the right of return, and every Jew, upon his decision to move to Israel, become almost automatically a citizen of Israel. For any other nationalities, it takes what it takes to become a citizen in the United States. If I came from Europe or from any, unlike those who cross the border, you have to apply, and it goes to the bureaucracy that controls immigration, and eventually you become a citizen. I know many, many American non-Jews. Many of them are having ministries in Jerusalem, who live in Jerusalem for many, many years. So the answer is yes. The other part of your question, the gate on the wall at the Temple Mount, I believe that, according to Bible, and I'm a Bible believer, that will hold true. But I also said that I believe that whatever is going to take place on the Temple Mount will be as a result of a miracle or signs and wonder, and it will be the hand of God on it. So I don't think Israel or any other country will have any say or any action to actually make it hasten the coming of Messiah.
Okay, did that answer your question?
Yes, Sister Francis. Thank you very much, and shalom to you all. God bless.
Shalom, shalom to you too.
Yeah. JJ from Virginia, quickly, you have a question for Dr. Wexler?
Yes, good morning, Francis. Dr. Wexler, we hear so much about the Gaza Strip and the settlements that Israel is building there. And there's always the implication that Israel doesn't have the right to build on that land. But didn't they win that land in the Six-Day War?
I think you're so correct. Israel is the only country that went to a war of defense, acquired some land because a war was waged against her, and now being pushed to give the land back. We didn't choose to go to war. But in the case of Gaza, we have no settlements in Gaza. Gaza is a separate part from the West Bank, and unilaterally we decided to leave Gaza. But this, you brought a very important point. We thought by leaving Gaza, we're going to create a neighbor that would be very friendly to Israel, that would be, we would live in peace with them. In fact, the people who live in Gaza get all their sustenance from Israel. All the goods and electricity and whatever comes to Gaza comes from Israel, yet they wage war against us. And there's a cycle of wars all the time. Now, we don't live in Gaza. There are no settlements in Gaza, yet we're being asked to leave the West Bank, where we do have a Jewish population, and one has to ask, well, we have an example of what took place already in Gaza. We used to be in Gaza. We decided to unilaterally leave Gaza. We evacuated every Jew, every Israeli from that region in the hope for peace. Peace did not come through this action. And now we're being told to do the same thing from the West Bank, which is the heart of Israel, and give half of Jerusalem to a group of people that hate Israel and don't wish to see us survive. That doesn't make any sense. Besides, throughout the last 60 years or 70 years, we've been told that if we give land, it will advance peace. Well, we gave land, and it never advanced any peace. There's no peace. We gave and gave and gave. You know, Albert Einstein said, if you try the same thing over and over again, there's a sign of lunacy. How can you expect to have different results if you try the same thing over and over again? And that's what Israel done, and enough is enough. So I think the world must come to a conclusion that Israel is there to stay. And if those that call the station or watch the station here, they believe in the Bible. Bible tells us Israel is the Jewish state. Capital is the capital of Jerusalem is the capital of Jerusalem. Take the Bible. That's the deed. Yeah. When you sell a house, you need the deed. Well, the Bible is our deed. Everything is registered. Everything is recorded, and there's no issue here. There's no issue here. And if one tells us try, well, we did. We tried. It doesn't work.
What percent of Jews in Israel still support land for peace, the idea?
I don't know, but one is too many.
Yeah. Like you say, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Right.
Look, if you give me an idea that hasn't been tried, I understand. Let's give it a try. But when you try the same thing over and over again, you got to be out of your mind to believe that it's going to make any difference. So that's the issue here. And truly, I believe that it's easier to be an Arab under in Israeli rule than under some of the situations that we know exist in monarchies or dictatorships and so on and so forth. Look at Iraq. Look at Iraq before. What can I say? It's an issue that wouldn't be resolved today. It's an issue that wouldn't be resolved probably next week either, but it's not for the lack of trial. We live in a rough neighborhood. It's not an issue of land. I understated many, many times. It's not an issue of land because, as Francine said before, there's so much land around. So what is it? It's a spiritual warfare.
Amen.
Your God is the God or their God is the God. End of story. Point.
They don't want part of the land. They want all of the land.
Right.
And they want to claim Jerusalem as their capital.
On their maps,
Right.
in schools, the word Israel doesn't exist. It says Palestine. It doesn't exist. So if it doesn't exist and you want to start giving them piece of land, what is the end result? They're going to say, okay, we have enough. Where you already see the maps that Israel is not even mentioned there. What does it mean? One has to be a little bit crazy to fall into the trap here. And I believe that Israel wants to live in peace. I said yesterday, if the Arabs, if Hamas in the south, if Hezbollah in the north, Al-Qaeda, Daesh, if all these people will lay down their weapons, there'll be peace in the Middle East. But if the Israelis will be stupid enough to lay down their weapons, they'll be massacred the next day. And that's the truth. How do I know? We tried. So I pray and I hope that things will change. But history teaches us that we shouldn't really look at it from that point of view. Everybody's against us. United Nations, or as I call it, United Nothing, has more declarations against Israel than any other country in the world. People die in Syria by the hundreds every day, and there's hardly any reaction in the world. Some kids throw stones in the city of Jerusalem. It's headline news. So go figure. We know where we're at. We know who we're fighting against. We know what we have to do. We believe in God. Me and my family, we serve the Lord.
Right. Spiritual. It's spiritual warfare.
Yes, it is.
And our time is up. And we want to thank you, Dr. Wexler, for being with us today, and hope it's not the last time. I understand you come to America often, and we want to invite you to be back on the program with us if you're in this area at any time. And Donnie, did you want to say something?
I would encourage everyone to go to his website, look at all the material, and if you want to go take a tour of Israel, he's taking one in June, and don't miss out. If you want to go, sign up quickly.
And thank you. It's been a pleasure having you last night in the church and on the program today. Our love, our prayers are with Israel, and we are standing behind you. And if our president for one moment leans in any direction other than toward Israel, we'll be discussing it on this program and getting the news out. And tell our people we do have a presence in Israel. We're on one of the cable systems there. And so we can speak out and we hear from Israel. It just we don't cover the whole nation yet, but God willing, we will. And we love you and thank you, and God bless you for being with us today.
Email questions and comments about today's program to onair@jsm.org. Be sure to join Francis Swaggart on Facebook at facebook.com/Francis Swaggart. Archived programs are available at sunlifetv.com. Francis and Friends is a production of the Sun Life Broadcasting Network.